Welcome to Daily Review, your daily dose of literary exploration. We dive into books that spark curiosity and ignite growth. While our passion often leads us to nonfiction reads that empower and improve your life, no book is off limits. From gripping thrillers to insightful memoirs and compelling fiction to historical accounts, we're here to share and discuss all the interesting reads we discover. Tune in for your next great book idea. Thank you so much for tuning in to Daily Review. We truly appreciate you joining us for your daily dose of literary exploration. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue to share these amazing books with you. If you're enjoying what you hear, please consider taking a moment to subscribe, rate, like, and comment on any of the platforms you're listening from. This really helps support our channel and allows us to get better and bring you even more great content. If today's review sparked your interest and you're ready to dive into a copy of the book, please consider using the link in our description to make your purchase. Not only does it make it easy for you to get your hands on the book, but it also directly supports our channel and the author, allowing us to keep bringing you more great content. Thanks again for being a part of the Daily Review community. Okay, so for today's deep dive, we're really going to challenge some deeply ingrained ideas about what it really takes to get ahead. Forget the ruthless pursuit of self-interest. Maybe even forget that balanced give and take that seems so, well, fair.
Right.
Today, we're plunging into the profound and often really counterintuitive insights from Adam Grant's seminal work, Give and Take, a revolutionary approach to success.
It's a fantastic book. Really changes perspectives.
It really does. Our mission today is basically to dissect the core principles behind these three distinct reciprocity styles. He talks about givers, takers, and matchers, and reveal how understanding these dynamics can fundamentally reshape, well, your professional and personal life.
Exactly. It's about seeing how generosity plays out in the real world.
You'll discover why the most generous people don't always finish last, and how maybe strategically cultivated generosity can lead to some unparalleled achievement.
Yeah, that strategically cultivated part is key.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're talking about success, and it might just challenge some of our long-held assumptions about being, nice in business and life.
It absolutely does. What Adam Grant masterfully does in Give and Take is move beyond this sort of simplistic notion that generosity is just a virtue, like just a nice thing to be.
Right, like it's separate from success.
Exactly. Instead, he presents this compelling research-backed argument that it can be a powerful engine for success, but, and this is crucial, with critical nuances.
Nuances are key here.
Definitely.
What?
The distinctions he draws between these reciprocity styles, and especially within the giver category itself, are not just theoretical ideas. They're grounded in robust studies, real-world stories, things that really force us to reconsider our own, default strategies for how we navigate our careers, our relationships. It's an exploration that really pushes against that conventional wisdom.
That's crucial. So to really dive in, let's start by painting a clear picture of these core reciprocity styles Grant identifies. Think of them as like the three main players in the game of human interaction. First up, we have the givers. Now, these are individuals whose default mode, their sort of natural inclination, is to offer more than they receive.
They lead with giving.
Exactly. They're the ones consistently providing help, sharing knowledge, offering support, making intros, contributing resources to others. Often without expecting anything back right away.
No immediate quid pro quo.
Right. Their motivation seems genuinely to be about contributing to others' well-being and success. They're often seen as, selfless, always willing to go that extra mile for someone else.
And then sort of on the opposite end of that spectrum, you find the takers.
Yeah, the name says it all, really.
Pretty much. These individuals prioritize their own interests above all else. Their primary aim in any interaction, any relationship, is basically to get more than they give.
Extract value.
Exactly. They view relationships, collaborations as opportunities to extract value rather than, say, create it mutually. Their focus is squarely on what they can gain. And they're generally not too concerned with the cost to others. They often seem driven by this sense of scarcity, like for them to win, someone else absolutely has to lose.
Right, a zero-sum game mentality. And then sandwiched between those two, we have the largest group, according to Grant, the matchers.
The majority, usually.
Yeah. These are the people who operate on a pretty strict principle of reciprocity. It's very balanced, almost transactional.
Tit for tat.
That's the perfect phrase. They live by a tit-for-tat philosophy. If you do something nice for them, they'll feel obligated, got to return the favor.
Got to even the score.
But equally, if you take from them or treat them unfairly, they'll feel completely justified in taking back or, seeking some kind of retribution.
Keeping things fair is paramount.
Totally. They're driven by fairness, equilibrium, and exchanges. They want to make sure neither party is consistently giving more or receiving more. It's all about maintaining that level playing field.
And, most of us, if we're really honest, probably find our actions aligning with this matcher category more often than we might initially think.
I was just thinking that. It feels like the default setting for a lot of interactions.
It's a common intuition, yeah, and it's actually backed up by quite a bit of psychological research. For instance, psychologist Shlomo Schwartz did these extensive studies, surveyed thousands of adults across dozens of countries.
Wow.
And he found that while most people say that giving is their single most important guiding principle,
What they value most.
right, their actual behavior, when you observe it, often aligns much more closely with matching.
Interesting disconnect there.
It is. And this really sets the stage for what Grant unveils as the central paradox of give and take. Because you'd naturally assume, wouldn't you, that being a giver would always be a positive thing, like a clear path to success and admiration?
Yeah, be nice, help people, good things happen. Seems logical.
Seems logical. But here's where the data, initially at least, presents a truly surprising, almost alarming downside.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. Because that finding you mentioned about givers having the lowest grades in medical school or bringing in less sales revenue, that seems to completely defy what we're often taught about being nice in competitive settings.
It really does.
It almost makes you wonder if generosity is like a liability sometimes, because here's where it gets really interesting and counterintuitive. Initial studies often show givers actually performing as the least successful.
At the bottom of the pile, initially.
Exactly. For instance, there was this large study, over 600 medical students in Belgium. The givers, the ones who consistently volunteered to help their peers study, shared their super detailed notes, maybe even tutored classmates.
The really helpful ones.
Yeah. They actually had the lowest first-year grades.
Wow.
They were apparently so focused on giving their classmates a leg up that it came directly at the expense of their own performance.
Sacrificing their own study time.
Precisely. And the negative correlation between being a giver and those first-year grades was so pronounced. Grant points out it was even stronger than the effect of smoking on the odds of getting lung cancer.
That's a staggering comparison. Really puts it in perspective.
It's stark, isn't it? Almost brutal. It paints this picture of givers potentially sacrificing their own success, almost becoming, like you said, chumps or doormats in these highly competitive environments.
It's a truly stark finding, yeah. And it highlights the potential cost of that kind of unbridled, maybe selfless giving, especially in the short term. And we see a similar, equally compelling pattern in the business world, particularly in sales.
Okay, what did they find there?
Well, a study in North Carolina revealed that givers brought in 2.5 times less annual sales revenue than both takers and matchers.
2.5 times less? That's huge.
It is huge. Imagine that.
Yeah.
They were just, too concerned about their customers' actual well-being, too focused on genuinely solving problems, avoiding any kind of aggressive selling.
Right. They wouldn't push a product if it wasn't a perfect fit.
Exactly. They wouldn't push for the highest possible sale if they felt it wasn't truly aligned with the customer's best interest. They'd often give away discounts or focus on building long-term relationships over just hitting immediate high-volume targets.
Which, in the short term...
In the short term, meant lower individual sales figures. Simple as that.
So, on the surface then, it really seems like being a pure, selfless giver might actually put you at the bottom of the ladder. Makes you vulnerable to exploitation or just... less effective in a competitive world.
Seems that way initially.
They're the ones who might get taken advantage of, right? Become the pushovers, the doormats.
That's the initial fear, yes.
But here's the central paradox, the big unveiling that Adam Grant introduces in Give and Take. While some givers do indeed fall to the very bottom, a different group of givers rises to the very top.
Right. It's not uniform. Givers are at both extremes.
Exactly. And the distinction, it turns out, isn't about raw talent or innate ability or even like a different personality type. It's about the strategies these successful givers use.
The choices they make.
The choices they make, precisely. These top-tier givers, they're just as ambitious, just as driven for achievement and recognition as the takers and matchers are.
They still want to succeed.
Absolutely. They simply pursue their goals through a different lens, through the lens of, let's call it, strategic generosity.
And what's truly fascinating here is that the giver identity itself isn't some kind of guaranteed path to either failure or success. It's really about how that giving is expressed.
Right, the context matters.
The context, the strategic intelligence behind it. That's where the deeper insights really lie, especially now in our increasingly interconnected world.
That's a great point. The whole landscape of work has changed so dramatically, hasn't it?
Fundamentally, it makes giving a much more advantageous approach today than it might have been, say, a few decades ago.
How so?
Well, think back to maybe our grandparents' generation. Many of them worked in pretty independent jobs, right? Often in manufacturing, agriculture, producing physical goods.
Individual output was key.
Exactly. Individual productivity, efficiency were paramount. Close collaboration, extensive mutual support. It wasn't always as essential to the core work itself.
So being a pure giver back then.
Could actually be seen as inefficient, maybe even a distraction in that kind of context. Constantly diverting attention to help others might slow down your own production line, so to speak.
That makes perfect sense. If your success was mainly tied to your individual output, then yeah, giving time away seems less efficient. But today, wow, the world is fundamentally different.
Completely different.
Over 80% of Americans now work in these interconnected service jobs. It's not about isolated production anymore.
No, it's about collaboration, problem solving in teams, navigating complex interdependencies, providing value through relationships.
Right. And in that environment, mutual support, sharing knowledge, helping others, it's absolutely essential just to get anything done.
It makes giving inherently more valuable to everyone involved in the system.
Okay, so the structure of work itself has shifted to favor giving more.
Precisely. And we see this shift playing out really compellingly in the long-term data from those very same Belgian medical students we talked about earlier.
Ah, the ones who started at the bottom.
The very same. While those givers started at the bottom in their first year, the data shows that by their second year, they had already caught up. They were slightly outperforming their peers.
Okay, so a quick turnaround.
But the real power of their giving style became dramatically evident over time by their 6th year of medical school.
Years later.
Years later, those same individuals who started as givers earned substantially higher grades than everyone else in their cohort.
Wow. So that initial short-term cost was totally outweighed by the long-term benefit. That's a powerful argument for, well, patience and professional development.
It really is. The long-term impact is profound. By that 6th year, having a giver style measured 6 years earlier was actually a better predictor of final medical school grades than the effect of smoking on lung cancer rates.
Get out. That's incredible.
Think about that. A behavioral trait exhibited way back at the start of this grueling academic journey had a more significant impact on ultimate success than a major health risk factor.
That really lands the point.
And it gets even better. By their 7th year, as they transitioned into actually practicing doctors, they climbed even further ahead. The effect of giving on their final medical school performance was even stronger than the effect of drinking alcohol on aggressive behavior.
So this longitudinal data just powerfully demonstrates that while there might be a short-term hit for selfless, maybe unstrategic giving, in the long run, the benefits really accrue significantly.
Absolutely. And it's not just about a change in profession or industry. It's a fundamental shift in how networks and organizations function today that rewards this type of collaborative, supportive behavior over the long haul. The world, it really does seem, is catching up to the givers.
Okay, so the world is catching up to the givers, but like you said, it's not just about being generically nice, is it? There's clearly a strategic element to how these successful givers operate.
Definitely. Strategy is key.
And this seems especially evident when we talk about something as critical as networking. We often picture networking as this, transactional exchange, collecting business cards, making a direct ask, getting something back right away.
The mature approach to networking, basically.
Yeah. But givers, it seems, have a fundamentally different and maybe far more effective approach.
Indeed. Successful givers employ distinct and often counterintuitive strategies across various domains, and networking is a prime example. We usually focus on the strength of our strong ties, right? Our closest friends, family, trusted colleagues.
Sure, the inner circle.
They provide deep bonds, immediate support. But what's less intuitive and often overlooked is the immense power of weak ties.
Weak ties, you mean acquaintances?
Exactly. Acquaintances, people you know peripherally, maybe from a past job, a former class, a professional group you rarely attend. Studies show these weak ties are actually crucial bridges to new information, new opportunities.
Really? How so?
They connect you to entirely different networks. For instance, research shows that almost 28% of job opportunities are found through weak ties, not strong ones.
28%, that's significant.
It is. They open doors to fresh perspectives, unique leads that your strong ties, just by virtue of being in your immediate circle, might not have access to.
That's fascinating because it's precisely those weak ties that can feel, well, awkward to reach out to sometimes, right? There's less inherent trust, less shared history.
That's the challenge.
But givers, it seems, have found a sort of loophole to leverage these weak ties effectively. How do they do that?
They do it by offering help without immediately expecting anything in return. By leading with generosity, they build trust and open pathways that might otherwise stay closed. It changes the dynamic of the interaction.
Can you give us an example of someone who really embodies this?
Absolutely. Take the really extraordinary case of Adam Rifkin. He's a software engineer who Fortune magazine famously called the best networker in the U.S.
Wow, quite the title.
Isn't it? His connections span across Silicon Valley giants, co-founders of Netscape, Twitter, Facebook, Napster. You name it.
Okay, so he's seriously connected.
Seriously connected. And Rifkin perfectly exemplifies this giver's loophole, not through these huge grand gestures, but through consistent, often low-cost acts of generosity.
Like what?
Well, for example, years ago, he built this incredibly popular fan site for the band Green Day. It was getting huge traffic.
Okay.
When the band's managers asked him for it, he just gave it to them,
Yeah.
handed it over. Didn't ask for credit, didn't ask for money, no reciprocal favor. He just wanted to help the band out.
Just gave away a valuable asset, essentially.
Essentially, yes. And there's another great anecdote about him that really illustrates this mindset. He got an email once from a self-described punk rock fan who thought Green Day had become too mainstream.
Huh. Okay.
Rifkin admitted later he initially pictured this guy as a stereotypical punk with a green mohawk and thought, I could probably never help this person professionally.
Right. Seems like a random connection.
Very random. Yet his natural inclination as a giver was still to respond, engage thoughtfully, offer some perspective. That seemingly random punk rock fan turned out to be Graham Spencer, who had just co-founded Excite, one of the earliest big internet search engines.
No.
Yes way.
Yep.
A taker or a matcher might have just deleted that email, right? Seeing no immediate benefit. But Rifkin's pure desire to connect and offer a thoughtful response built this incredibly valuable bridge.
Wow. That's a lesson right there.
It really is. As LinkedIn founder Reid Hoffman notes, the more altruistic your attitude, the more benefits you will gain. By consistently setting out to help others without strings attached, you rapidly reinforce your reputation and frankly expand your universe of possibilities in ways you could never predict.
These seemingly small, low-cost acts of giving done consistently, authentically. They built Rifkin this invaluable network and reputation.
Exactly. And this strategy isn't just about forming new weak ties. Reactivating dormant ties is another incredibly powerful strategy for givers.
Dormant ties, you mean old acquaintances you've lost touch with?
Precisely. People you knew years ago, maybe worked with, went to school with. These relationships offer the best of both worlds. They have the novel information potential of weak ties, because you've been in different circles for a while.
Right, they know new things, new people.
But they also have that existing foundation of trust and rapport that comes from the strong ties you once shared.
Ah, so it's easier to reconnect.
Much easier. Re-engaging is comfortable, remarkably efficient. You don't have to build trust from scratch. You just reactivate it. And often, those dormant ties have evolved into positions where they can offer completely new insights or connections you wouldn't otherwise access.
So it's not just about constantly meeting new people, but also about nurturing existing connections, even the ones that have been, well, dormant for a while.
Absolutely.
This really shifts the perspective on networking, doesn't it? From a transactional chase to more of an ongoing relationship-building process.
It becomes relational, not transactional.
And this idea of thinking beyond yourself, actively considering others' perspectives, that extends really powerfully into collaboration too, doesn't it? Especially when it comes to overcoming our own biases.
You've hit on a critical point there. Collaboration, especially in complex teams, is often subtly undermined by what psychologists call the responsibility bias.
Responsibility bias, what's that?
It's our inherent tendency as humans to overestimate our own contributions in any group effort. It's a very common psychological blind spot.
We all think we do more than our fair share.
Pretty much. Studies of married couples, for instance, consistently show that when you ask both partners to estimate their share of housework or childcare, their individual estimates often sum up to way over 100%.
Huh. I can believe that.
Each person genuinely believes they're doing more. And we see this play out in professional contexts, too. Jonas Salk, the brilliant scientist behind the polio vaccine.
The huge achievement.
Monumental. But he famously claims sole credit for it, largely because his own efforts, his own struggles and breakthroughs were so vivid in his mind. He had less direct information, less visibility into the immense contributions of his diverse team members.
And how did the team feel?
They felt, in Grant's words, painfully snubbed, deeply undervalued. Imagine pouring your heart and soul into that kind of project and then feeling erased from the narrative.
Absolutely demoralizing, utterly frustrating. So how do givers, or how can we all, counteract this pervasive responsibility bias in practice? Is there like a simple fix?
The fix, surprisingly, is remarkably simple but also profoundly effective. To counteract this bias, you explicitly ask individuals to list others' contributions before they list their own.
Flip the script.
Exactly. Studies show that when employees are prompted to think about how much help they receive from their bosses or colleagues before reflecting on their own contributions, their estimates of their colleagues' input can literally double.
Double, just by asking the question differently.
Just by changing the order of reflection. This simple reframing forces a perspective shift. It significantly reduces the responsibility bias and fosters a more accurate, more appreciative, and ultimately more collaborative view of the teamwork.
It moves you from that internal focus to an external one first. Makes others' efforts more salient.
Precisely.
That's a great, really actionable, practical tip. It forces you to consciously consider and credit others rather than just defaulting to your own efforts. And closely related to this, you mentioned another bias, the perspective gap.
Yes, the perspective gap.
This sounds like our struggle to really understand what someone else is going through.
That's exactly it. It refers to our tendency to drastically underestimate how much a psychologically or physically intense state, like pain, stress, even hunger, affects another person when we are not experiencing that same state ourselves.
Right. If I'm not in pain, it's hard to grasp how much pain you're in.
Exactly. It's why physicians, for instance, often consistently rate their patients' pain as less severe than the patients themselves report. We simply can't fully grasp another's internal experience without somehow sharing it or having a very strong capacity for empathy.
And that's a fundamental challenge for true empathy and effective collaboration, isn't it?
It is. But the ability to step outside one's own immediate frame of reference, to truly try and consider another's perspective, is a hallmark of successful givers in collaborative settings. Grant mentions this classic toddler experiment.
Oh, yeah.
Researchers found that 18-month-olds demonstrated this budding capacity for perspective-taking. They offered broccoli, which the researcher had previously shown a liking for, even though the toddlers themselves clearly preferred goldfish crackers.
So they gave what the other person wanted, not what they wanted.
Exactly. Unlike slightly younger, 14-month-olds who consistently just offered what they liked, the goldfish, that developmental leap illustrates our innate capacity to imagine another's perspective, even when it differs from our own. Successful givers really hone this skill throughout their lives.
That's a powerful and, frankly, adorable analogy, isn't it? It really means shifting your mindset from how much am I doing or what do I want to how can I truly understand and support what others need.
That's the core shift.
And this crucial concept is captured beautifully by something called expedition behavior. That term comes from the National Outdoor Leadership School, NOLS, right? It evokes these intense, high-stakes situations.
Yes, expedition behavior perfectly encapsulates this giver mindset in high-stakes collaboration. It involves putting the group's goals first, showing as much concern for others as for oneself. You know, in environments where teamwork isn't just nice, it's essential for survival or success.
Like literally on an expedition, or
Yeah.
maybe in space.
Exactly. NASA shuttle commander Jeff Ashby, reflecting on what made his crew successful in the ultimate team environment, stated, "Being selfless, generous, and putting the team ahead of yourself is what helps us succeed in space more than anything else."
Wow. More than technical skill, even.
That's what he suggests. This mindset, moving beyond individual glory to collective survival and success, creates what psychologists call psychological safety within a team.
Psychological safety, meaning people feel safe to contribute, to take risks.
Precisely. Think of George Meyer, a legendary writer for The Simpsons. He was known for his incredible talent, obviously, but also for his deeply empathetic nature. He'd often console fellow writers when their beloved jokes or storylines got cut.
Which must happen all the time in a writer's room.
Constantly. He contributed to an environment where everyone felt safe to share even their most outrageous ideas without fear of harsh criticism or ridicule. This psychological safety fosters far better collaboration because people aren't guarding their ideas, they're not afraid of vulnerability, they're not trying to protect their ego.
They're genuinely working together.
Exactly, working together to create the best possible outcome. It's about seeing your colleagues not as rivals, but as, well, fellow travelers on a shared, often challenging expedition.
That makes perfect sense. If you feel safe, you're way more likely to contribute your best work and support others, leading to a much more innovative and productive environment. Okay, shifting gears slightly here. Givers also seem to have this truly unique knack for identifying potential in others, seeing diamonds in the rough, where maybe others just see rough edges or nothing much at all.
Yes. This ability to spot and then cultivate untapped talent is a profound differentiator for successful givers.
It feels like a superpower almost.
It kind of is. And it's a testament to their focus on what could be, rather than just what is right now. Grant tells the remarkable story of C.J. Skender, an accounting professor at the University of North Carolina.
Okay.
He's apparently a living legend in the academic world, known for his distinctive bow ties, his uncanny ability to recall thousands of song lyrics.
Huh. Sounds like quite the character.
Definitely. But also for consistently producing top-scoring CPA students and future accounting professors, year after year.
So what was his secret?
What's truly remarkable is that he recognized talent not just by, say, intellectual ability or initial grades, but by motivation and sheer work ethic.
Ah, so not just raw talent, but drive.
Exactly. For example, he famously bet that one student, Beth Trainum, who seemed pretty average on paper, would pass the incredibly difficult CPA exam simply because of how hard she worked, not because she was some accounting prodigy.
He saw the effort.
He saw the effort. He saw promise in Reggie Love, who later became Barack Obama's personal aide, not initially for academic brilliance, but because he worked diligently and was always prepared for class. He went out of his way to encourage another student, Marie Arcuri, for her persistence in the face of setbacks, celebrating her grit more than just her innate gifts.
So he was cultivating the spark rather than just looking for a fully formed flame. This sounds an awful lot like the Pygmalion effect, right? Or sometimes called the Bloomer effect.
Spot on.
The idea that a leader's or a teacher's belief in someone's potential can actually create a self-fulfilling prophecy. It feels almost magical.
It feels magical, but it's profound psychology, not magic. The classic study illustrating this was done by Robert Rosenthal and Lenore Jacobson in elementary schools.
Right, I remember this one.
They randomly labeled a group of students as bloomers, telling their teachers these kids had exceptional intellectual potential, even though the selection was totally arbitrary.
And what happened?
Those randomly chosen bloomers made unusual, significant intellectual gains over the school year. Why? Because the teachers, holding these higher expectations, subtly changed their behavior.
Oh, so?
They provided more challenging material, offered more supportive feedback, created a warmer emotional climate for those specific students. It wasn't about the student's actual initial ability. It was the teacher's belief in that ability that made the difference.
And this applies beyond the classroom, too.
Absolutely. It's been replicated in high-stakes environments. In the Israel Defense Forces, for example, trainees who were randomly labeled as high potentials performed significantly better on things like expertise tests and weapon evaluations.
Why? Same reason.
Same reason. Their platoon leaders, imbued with this belief in their potential, offered more help, more career advice, more constructive feedback. They saw mistakes not as failures, but as learning opportunities for these high-potential trainees.
So instead of seeing talent as this fixed, finite thing, givers see it as something that can be nurtured, grown, unlocked.
Exactly. Unlike takers who might see talented people as a threat to their own status.
Right.
Or matchers who might wait for concrete proof of high potential before they invest their time and energy.
They need to see results first.
Right. Givers proactively look for and cultivate that internal motivation, that willingness to grow. They essentially become talent scouts for hidden potential.
They focus on the willingness to work hard and learn, not just raw aptitude or immediate results.
Precisely. And this strategic focus on nurturing is evident even among the very first coaches of world-class musicians and tennis players.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Research found that these early teachers often weren't necessarily exceptional coaches in terms of, say, technical skill or strategic genius themselves.
Okay.
But they were extraordinary at making the initial learning experience pleasant and rewarding. They showered students with praise, encouraged curiosity, fostered a deep love for the activity itself.
So they built the foundation.
They built the foundation. This nurturing environment, built on belief and positive reinforcement, motivated the students to put in the immense, often tedious hours of practice required to eventually achieve world-class success. It's about creating an environment where potential can truly flourish, rather than just identifying it after the fact. They cultivate this virtuous cycle. Belief leads to effort. Effort leads to growth. Growth reinforces belief.
That's a great point. It's about building that foundational love for the activity that fuels the long-term dedication needed. And this nurturing, supportive approach also seems to extend to how givers influence others. You might intuitively expect influential people to be, dominant, authoritative, maybe even a bit aggressive in their communication.
That's the common stereotype, yeah.
Mhm.
The powerful leader.
But givers, surprisingly, often find unexpected power in what Grant calls powerless communication. This feels like another major counterintuitive twist.
It absolutely is. Research suggests there are really two fundamental paths to influence, and they represent a key divergence in strategy between givers and often takers.
Okay, what are the two paths?
The first path is dominance. This is where you gain influence because others see you as strong, authoritative, assertive. Think forceful speaking, projecting unwavering confidence, maybe interrupting or speaking over others to assert your ideas. This path is often favored by takers.
Got it. Command and control.
Pretty much. The second path is prestige. This is where you earn influence because others genuinely respect you, admire you, trust you.
Influence through respect, not force.
Exactly. And this latter path, prestige, is where givers truly excel. And it's often cultivated through what appears, at least on the surface, to be powerless communication.
Okay, powerless communication sounds completely counterintuitive for gaining influence. What exactly does that involve? Does it mean sounding hesitant or unsure all the time?
Not exactly unsure, but it includes linguistic elements that traditionally might be seen as signs of weakness or deference. These include things like disclaimers, starting with, I know this might be against the rules, but, or this might sound like a silly idea, but,
Okay.
tag questions, ending a statement with, Dialo, what do you think? Or, don't you agree?
Right, seeking input.
Seeking input. Hedges using words like maybe, sort of, kind of, I guess, and sometimes intensifiers like really or very. Now, these markers can signal humility, openness to input, a less assertive stance.
Things you might think would reduce your influence.
Exactly what you might assume. However, studies consistently show that in certain contexts, especially in close working relationships within teams, in service interactions, even in legal settings, what seems like powerless speech can actually be more influential than overtly powerful speech.
More influential? How?
It tends to disarm people. It builds trust. It signals that you're not a threat, that you're collaborative.
Wow, that's a real mind bender. It challenges our core assumptions about projecting confidence equals projecting power. Can you give us a real-world example of this playing out?
A fantastic illustration comes from the advertising world. Don Lane, a senior account executive at Arnold Worldwide, the agency behind Volkswagen's ads.
Okay.
Lane famously came up with the iconic slogan, "Drive it, you'll get it."
Great line. But wait, wasn't he an account guy? Aren't the creatives supposed to do that?
Exactly. That was highly unusual. In the rigid structure of ad agencies back then, account people were simply not supposed to contribute to the creative process. It wasn't their lane, so to
Right.
speak.
So how did he pitch it, if you were a taker?
A taker might have demanded credit, tried to force the idea through. A matcher might have tried to call in a favor. But Lane was a giver. He genuinely didn't care about getting the credit. He just wanted to help the creative team land a brilliant campaign for the client.
So how did he approach the creative director?
He didn't demand or assert. He used that powerless approach. He used a disclaimer and a tag question. He said something like, I know this is against the rules, but I want to give you a sense of what I'm talking about. What do you think of this line? Drive it, you'll get it.
And the creative director.
Immediately recognized the brilliance of the phrase. Got it, just like the slogan said. The campaign was a massive success. And Lane, he got promoted faster than many of his peers.
So his humility, his clear intention just to help, rather than assert dominance, actually won him incredible credibility and influence in the end.
Exactly. That powerless speech signaled he wasn't trying to threaten the creative director's authority or overstep his bounds. He was just trying to share a good idea out of a genuine desire to contribute.
And that built his reputation.
It built his reputation as this exceptionally helpful, insightful contributor, someone creative teams genuinely enjoyed collaborating with, because he made them feel respected and safe, not threatened.
That's powerful. Are there other examples?
Yes. Consider the compelling case Grant mentions of Dave Walton, a lawyer who, despite having a noticeable stammer,
Okay. Which some might perceive as a lack of confidence.
right, despite that, he successfully won a landmark $7 million verdict in a really high-profile case.
Yeah.
His apparent lack of overt, smooth confidence, stemming from his stammer, paradoxically humanized him. It earned the jury's trust.
How so?
In the context of a jury trial, where jurors are constantly evaluating credibility and sincerity, his vulnerability allowed him to connect more deeply. It demonstrated authenticity. It made his arguments perhaps resonate more profoundly because he didn't seem like a slick, potentially manipulative lawyer.
So this really comes down to authenticity then. Givers naturally excel at this because their questions, their sometimes tentative language, often stem from a genuine desire to understand and help, not to manipulate or overpower.
That's precisely it. It creates space for genuine connection.
And this ties into asking questions and seeking advice, too.
Absolutely. Givers build prestige by truly asking questions and genuinely seeking advice, not as some kind of rhetorical tactic, but because they really want to understand others' needs and perspectives. Take Kildare Scotto, who was consistently the top-selling optician in his company.
Okay, a salesperson.
But he didn't see himself as a salesperson. He fundamentally saw himself as an optician whose job was to help people see better. So, before selling glasses, he wouldn't launch into a sales pitch.
What would he do?
He'd ask patients about their hobbies, their work, what they did on vacations, their daily habits. He was genuinely trying to understand their needs and lifestyle first.
Building rapport, understanding the context.
Exactly. This builds immediate, genuine connection. And, as psychologist James Pennebaker puts it, it allows others the joy of talking about themselves. By asking open-ended questions and listening actively, Escoto could understand, for instance, a skeptical patient's misconceptions about multifocal lenses.
And then address them directly.
Gently, yes. Explain their specific benefits for her lifestyle, based on what she told him. This approach earned respect and trust, which almost effortlessly led to a significant $725 sale in that case. And beyond asking questions, seeking advice itself is a powerful influence tactic often used naturally by givers.
Asking for advice makes you more influential. Seems backward.
It does, but research shows asking for advice increases how trustworthy and competent others perceive you to be. It's flattering to be asked, and it signals you value the other person's expertise. It further cements a giver's influence and builds rapport.
It raises an important question, doesn't it? In a world that so often seems to reward outward displays of strength, dominance, unyielding confidence, how do we redefine what true influence actually looks like?
It really forces a rethink. It appears that vulnerability, when it's sincerely offered, when it's rooted in a genuine desire to help and connect, that can be a profound source of power, trust, and long-term impact. It's about building bridges, not walls.
That's a truly profound thought. It completely reframes the idea of strength and influence, pushing us to rethink those assumptions. Now, one of the biggest, most common concerns people have with adopting a giver style is that very real risk of burnout, or as we touched on earlier, being exploited, becoming that doormat.
Absolutely. It's a valid concern.
The conventional wisdom and even some initial research Grant cites does suggest that more giving leads to more burnout, especially for people in, say, health professions who are constantly caring for others in high-stress situations. How do we reconcile this with the idea of givers also rising to the top?
That initial research did indeed suggest that direct link, yeah. More getting equals more burnout, especially in those emotionally demanding jobs.
Yeah.
But the reality, as Grant uncovers, is actually far more nuanced than a simple linear relationship.
Okay, so it's not that straightforward.
Not at all. Givers don't necessarily burn out from too much giving itself. They burn out from a critical lack of feedback on the impact of their giving.
So it's not the giving, it's not seeing the results.
Exactly. This phenomenon is better described as compassion fatigue. It's the stress and weariness that arises not from the act of caring per se, but from feeling like you're caring for others without being able to help effectively, or without ever seeing the tangible difference you're making. It's that feeling of pouring yourself out into a void.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. It's not the giving that's the problem, it's the invisible giving. Or feeling like your efforts aren't landing, like those university fundraising callers you mentioned earlier who were struggling despite their good intentions.
Exactly. They weren't seeing the immediate fruit of their labor. In that pivotal study, university fundraising callers who identified as givers initially struggled. They brought in significantly fewer donations than their taker and matcher colleagues.
Why?
They lacked the personal rewards, that sense of purpose that mattered most to them. They were just making calls, facing rejection, not seeing the impact. But then the researchers introduced this crucial intervention.
What did they do?
They simply allowed these callers to meet a scholarship recipient, someone whose life had been profoundly changed by the very donations they were soliciting.
Ah, connecting the effort to the outcome.
Precisely. The impact was immediate and dramatic. After this direct human connection, the givers' productivity just soared. They didn't just catch up. They actually started surpassing the takers in the amount of money they raised each week.
Wow, just by seeing the human impact.
Seeing the human impact revitalized their motivation, their energy. They saw their work wasn't just making calls. It was genuinely changing lives.
And it's not just fundraisers, right? You see similar effects in other professions where people are doing critical, maybe often behind-the-scenes work.
Yes, definitely. Consider radiologists, for instance. Their work can feel quite detached from the actual patient, right? Just looking at scans.
Sure, very technical, removed.
But when researchers simply showed radiologists and patient photos alongside their CT scans,
It's just a photo.
just a photo, their diagnostic reports became, on average, 29% longer and noticeably more careful, more detailed.
Incredible. Why?
Simply seeing a face, rather than just an abstract image, seemed to heighten their empathy, their connection to the human impact of their diagnosis. It led to more thorough work. Similarly, Grant mentions Italian nurses who were assembling surgical kits for operations.
Okay, repetitive work, perhaps.
Could be. They became significantly more attractive and more accurate after they had a chance to meet the actual healthcare practitioners who would be using those kits in surgery.
Again, closing that loop.
Closing the loop. These direct, visible connections to the beneficiaries of their work made the giving feel more meaningful, more concrete, less abstract. It reduced burnout and even seemed to increase their overall inclination toward deeper, more impactful giving.
That makes so much sense. We all need to feel that our efforts genuinely matter, that we're not just, cogs in some machine. And this powerful insight leads us directly to the concept of the otherish giver. That sounds like the sweet spot, doesn't it? For sustained, impactful generosity. Not purely selfless, but definitely not selfish either.
The otherish giver is indeed the key. It's the solution to sustainable generosity and avoiding that burnout trap. These are the successful givers who manage to be both other-interested and self-interested.
Both. At the same time.
Yes. They recognize that their own well-being, their own ambition, aren't actually antithetical to generosity. In fact, they can fuel it. They pursue power, achievement, personal growth, not instead of being generous, but alongside being profoundly generous and helpful.
So they don't sacrifice themselves entirely.
No, they don't sacrifice their own core interests or well-being for others constantly. Instead, they find this synergistic relationship between personal fulfillment and collective contribution.
So it's not pure altruism in the strictest sense. It's maybe altruism with a healthy, strategic dose of self-awareness and, well, self-preservation. This sounds like the secret to avoiding that doormat effect we worried about earlier.
It absolutely is. Consider the remarkable findings from a study Grant cites on Caring Canadians Award winners. These are individuals recognized for sustaining extraordinary giving efforts over decades.
Okay, long-term givers.
Exactly. These highly successful, long-term givers consistently scored higher on both other interests, their capacity for generosity and self-interest, their quest for power, achievement, personal recognition compared to less sustained givers.
So they cared about others and they cared about their own success.
Yes, this dual motivation seems to fuel their resilience. It provides an internal feedback loop. It prevents the kind of burnout that often plagues purely selfless givers who neglect their own needs entirely. They recognize that by taking care of themselves, they can actually give more effectively and for a longer time.
That's fascinating. It completely flips the script on how we usually think about ambition versus generosity. We often frame them as opposing forces, right? You're either ambitious or you're generous.
Exactly. But here they're synergistic. And the research goes even further, showing that the very act of giving, when done right, can actually boost happiness and meaning, reduce stress, even distract us from our own personal problems in a healthy way, becomes a source of positive energy.
And happier people are more productive.
That's absolutely right. It's a powerful, positive feedback loop. Happiness, in turn, has profound benefits. Happier people tend to work harder, work smarter, make better decisions, and yes, even earn more. One study, for instance, showed that physicians who were put in a happier mood made faster and more accurate diagnoses.
Wow.
And a truly surprising finding that almost defies standard economic logic. The billionaire philanthropist John Huntsman Sr. discovered that the very act of giving money away seemed to somehow contribute to his fortune.
Giving money away made him richer. How?
He calculated, looking back, that for every $1 in extra charitable giving he made, his income was $3.75 higher down the line. He famously called giving an addiction, not in a negative sense, but implying it was this positive, self-reinforcing habit that fueled his overall success and well-being.
That's an incredible insight that giving can actually generate more rather than just deplete resources. So it's not just about what you give, but how you give and how you structure that giving to make it sustainable and energizing. And that brings us to this concept of chunking your giving versus sprinkling it.
Right. Instead of sprinkling giving, engaging in numerous small, fragmented acts of generosity throughout the day or week, which can feel distracting and ultimately become exhausting.
Like death by 1,000 paper cuts of kindness.
Kind of. Successful givers, the otherish ones, often chunk their giving into more concentrated blocks of time. Grant gives the example of Conry Callahan, a dedicated teacher who co-launched Minds Matter Philadelphia, a program helping high-achieving, low-income students prepare for college.
Okay.
Instead of spreading her, say, 5 weekly hours of mentoring across various days after school, she packed them all into one focused full day on Saturdays.
All at once?
All at once. By chunking her giving like that, she experienced its impact more vividly. She felt her efforts were more than just a drop in the bucket. And this helped her avoid burnout. It allowed her to fully immerse herself in the impact she was making it more rewarding.
So it's about being intentional, carving out dedicated, focused time for giving that actually feels enjoyable and meaningful, rather than letting it become just another obligation that slowly drains your energy. Quality over constant, fragmented quantity.
That's a crucial distinction. As psychologists Netta Weinstein and Richard Ryan have demonstrated, giving has that energizing, well-being boosting effect only if it's experienced as an enjoyable, meaningful choice, rather than something undertaken purely out of duty or obligation.
Makes sense. If it feels like a chore, it's draining.
Exactly. Sean Haggerty at Vanguard, for example, is a dedicated mentor with a passion for education. He chose to chunk his giving by volunteering a full week each year to teach at Vanguard's corporate university. He focused his energy there, rather than spreading himself thin across many different causes, just out of a generalized sense of duty.
And he found that more rewarding.
He finds incredible personal satisfaction from that focused immersion. It makes it energizing rather than exhausting for him. This otherish approach, being strategic about how and when you give, allows givers to sustain their contributions and ultimately even give more in the long run than purely selfless givers might. As Nobel Prize winner Herbert Simon observed decades ago, it's truly a sustainable model for making an impact.
All of this sounds fantastic, truly. But we need to address the elephant in the room again. What about that risk of exploitation? Givers, with their trusting nature, can be incredibly vulnerable to takers. We've all heard the saying, no good deed goes unpunished. How do these savvy, otherish givers protect themselves from becoming that chump or doormat in a world that, let's be honest, still has its share of less benevolent actors?
It's a critical challenge, absolutely, and Grant addresses it head-on. The research unfortunately confirms the risk. Givers are often about twice as likely to be victimized by things like fraud or manipulation compared to matchers or takers.
Twice as likely. Ouch.
Ouch indeed. Grant tells this cautionary tale of Peter Audit, a financial advisor who bought a client list from a colleague named Brad, who seemed really agreeable and trustworthy.
Okay. Seemed okay on the surface.
Exactly. Peter, being a classic giver operating on trust, believed Brad was acting in good faith. However, Brad was actually a perfect example of an agreeable taker.
Agreeable taker, meaning charming, but self-serving.
Precisely. While charming to Peter's face, Brad systematically and secretly went behind his back and stole many of Peter's newly acquired clients back without paying him a dime for them, Peter's trusting nature made him susceptible.
Wow, so someone can appear agreeable, polite, warm, cooperative on the surface, but actually be a taker underneath, a faker?
Absolutely. Like Ken Lay of Enron, who is notorious for being incredibly charming and generous to powerful people above him while simultaneously exploiting and mistreating his subordinates. The Dutch have a chillingly accurate phrase for this behavior: kissing up, kicking down.
Kissing up, kicking down. That paints a picture. So how can givers, who are so trusting by nature, learn to spot these agreeable takers, these fakers, before it's too late? Is it possible?
While it's certainly easy to be fooled by that surface agreeableness, the good news is that research suggests takers often leak clues through their behavior, especially over time. And givers, precisely because they tend to be more attuned to others' thoughts, feelings, and underlying motivations.
They pay more attention to people.
Generally, yes. They are often more accurate judges of others' true motives in the long run. They develop a sort of sincerity screening ability.
Sincerity screening, what kind of clues do they pick up on?
They tend to notice subtle behavioral cues. For instance, the excessive use of first-person pronouns like I and me when someone is describing team successes. That often betrays a self-centered perspective, even when talking about group efforts.
Interesting. What else?
Another telling clue, particularly at the executive level, can be observed in significant pay discrepancies. Taker CEOs, for example, often earn triple the salary and bonuses of the next highest paid person in their company, compared to an industry average of maybe just 1.5 times.
Wow, big gap.
Huge gap. They also command, on average, 7 times higher non-cash compensation, compared to an industry average of maybe 2.5 times higher. These kinds of self-serving patterns, when observed over time, can serve as red flags that true agreeableness might just be a facade.
So givers have this sincerity screening advantage, potentially a sort of built-in lie detector for character over time. But even with that, how do they overcome their natural inclination to be less assertive for themselves? Especially when it comes to things like salary negotiations or advocating for their own career progression. This is a really common struggle, right, for people who tend to put others first.
It's a huge struggle.
Yeah.
And this is where Grant reveals a truly powerful psychological hack specifically for givers: advocating for others.
Advocating for others, how does that help them?
Well, givers and studies consistently show this includes many women who were often socialized toward a giving mindset, really struggle to negotiate forcefully for their own interests. They fear appearing selfish or aggressive or violating those social norms about being accommodating.
Right, the don't rock the boat feeling.
Exactly. The breakthrough insight is that when these same givers negotiate on behalf of someone else, whether it's for their family, their team, their company, maybe a cause they believe in, their assertiveness increases dramatically. They become incredibly formidable negotiators.
Really, just by shifting the focus.
Just by shifting the focus. They achieve significantly better outcomes when advocating for others compared to when advocating for themselves. They can effectively chalk it up to caring. They redirect their natural inclination to protect and provide for others toward achieving goals that also benefit themselves.
That's incredible. So their intrinsic desire to help others can paradoxically fuel their personal push for what they deserve because it reframes the negotiation. It's not about personal greed anymore. It's about a duty to those they care about.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It reframes it internally. Grant gives this great example of Samir, a talented professional who consistently found himself settling for less in salary negotiations because he just felt uncomfortable advocating strongly for himself. He saw it as selfish.
A classic giver dilemma.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
However, when he consciously shifted his mindset before a big negotiation and framed it internally as representing his family's interests, thinking about how increased compensation would provide better opportunities for his kids or greater security for his partner.
Okay, he's fighting for them now.
Exactly. His assertiveness completely transformed. He confidently asked for more, justified it well, and gained an extra $70,000 plus in total compensation.
70,000, wow. And how did his boss react?
What's more, his boss actually respected this newfound assertiveness. He saw it not as selfish, but as a positive signal of Samir's dedication and commitment to his family, yes, but by extension, to the company that employed him. Samir himself described it as a psychological weapon against myself, realizing the solution was thinking about myself as an agent, an advocate for my family. The minute I start thinking I'm hurting my family who's depending on me for this, I don't feel guilty about pushing.
That's a truly powerful psychological hack. allowing your intrinsic desire to help others to fuel your personal push for what you deserve. It's about leveraging your natural inclination as a giver, rather than trying to suppress it or feeling guilty about pursuing your own needs. It reframes the entire interaction.
Exactly. This technique is sometimes called using a relational account, offering an explanation for your request that highlights your concern for others' interests. It helps maintain that positive giver image while still allowing you to push effectively for personal gain.
Clever. Are there other strategies givers use to protect themselves while still being generous?
Yes, another fascinating one Grant discusses is generous tit-for-tat.
Generous tit for tat. How does that differ from regular matcher tit for tat?
While matchers operate on strict, often immediate reciprocity, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, you stab my back, I stab yours.
Right. Keeping score, precisely.
Successful givers might employ a more flexible, generous version. They'll still start by being cooperative, demonstrating a willingness to give first. If competition arises, if someone acts like a taker towards them, they will match that competition to protect themselves. They're not doormats.
Okay, so they defend themselves.
Yes, but the key difference is they are notably more forgiving than strict matchers. They're quicker to return to cooperation after a competitive move, allowing for reconciliation and rebuilding trust rather than holding a grudge indefinitely.
Like Abraham Lincoln, he's often depicted as someone who could be incredibly strategic but also forgiving.
A perfect example of generous tit-for-tat in action, particularly in the political arena. Lincoln, throughout his career, would often forgive rivals who had acted against him, people like the ambitious Lyman Trumbull or the volatile Norman Judd. He'd extend trust, offer a helping hand, express faith in their character.
Building goodwill.
Building goodwill. But also, crucially, he would clearly signal his awareness of their past actions. He wasn't naive. Then, when he truly needed their support later on, he wouldn't hesitate to ask for reciprocity, reminding them subtly of the goodwill he'd shown.
Calling in the chips but gently.
Exactly. For instance, he helped Judd mediate a significant political conflict. Then, at a crucial juncture for his own nomination, he shrewdly asked Judd, "Can you not help me a little in this matter, in your end of the vineyard?" Judd, likely feeling that sense of obligation and recognizing Lincoln's consistent goodwill, came through, securing a major editorial supporting Lincoln and ensuring a favorable convention outcome.
So Lincoln's default was giver-like, always seeking to build goodwill.
But he recognized the value of occasional strategic matching when necessary. This allowed him to maintain strong relationships and collective support while simultaneously protecting his own and his party's interests. His acute perspective-taking allowed him to forecast with uncanny accuracy what his opponents were likely to do, and thus checkmate them, often through strategic generosity. It was about playing the long game, not just winning the immediate skirmish.
This all leads to a much larger, really exciting idea that these individual giver strategies, when they're understood and consciously applied, can actually be scaled up. We can use them to cultivate an entire culture of generosity within organizations, teams, even broader communities.
Exactly. It's not just about individual behavior. It's about creating systems and norms that actively encourage and reward giving, fundamentally shifting the social fabric of a group.
So how do we start building that culture? What are the challenges?
Well, one of the fundamental challenges in fostering a culture of generosity is that giving often goes unnoticed. Or worse, sometimes it gets masked by self-interested explanations because there can be this weird societal stigma against being seen as a do-gooder.
Right. People don't want to seem naive or like they're bragging about being helpful.
Precisely. People fear being seen as weak or maybe manipulative if they're overtly altruistic. This leads to this underestimation of how many people are actually givers at heart, which then reinforces a skewed social norm that maybe portrays everyone else as primarily a taker or a matcher. It creates this cycle of cynicism.
So we operate under this false assumption that everyone else is just out for themselves or keeping score, even if they aren't. And that assumption then inhibits our own willingness to give openly.
Exactly. It becomes a self-limiting belief for the whole group.
But platforms like FreeCycle seem to address this directly by just making giving inherently visible, right?
Right. FreeCycle, founded by Dron Beal, is a brilliant grassroots example of making giving visible and normalizing it on a large scale. It's this global network where people just give away unwanted items for free. Absolutely no currency, no trading allowed. It's pure giving.
Just pay it forward, basically.
Essentially. And what's fascinating is that even when people initially tried to find matcher loopholes, Grant mentions a user who only wanted to give away his fishing tackle to someone whose own tackle had been stolen, trying to find this specific, sympathetic recipient.
Trying to make it feel fair somehow.
Kind of. But the overarching community norm quickly shifted behavior. The pervasive expectation just became give. It fostered this culture where generosity was the default visible behavior, not the exception.
And what's truly interesting is how powerfully these social norms influence our behavior, even if we don't realize it, even on an unconscious level.
Oh, profoundly. Even if people initially deny that they're motivated by what others are doing, just knowing what their peers are up to can subtly yet powerfully shift their actions.
Like the energy conservation studies.
Exactly. Those studies on energy conservation showed that people were most influenced to reduce their electricity use simply by knowing that their neighbors were conserving energy, even if they initially claimed that peer influence wasn't a motivation for them at all.
They didn't want to be the odd one out using too much power.
Pretty much. When electricity takers grung, those households consuming more than the average were shown simple charts comparing their consumption to their immediate neighbors. They significantly reduced their energy use to get closer to that community norm. It powerfully demonstrates the profound, often subconscious impact of making giving, or conserving in this case, visible and contextualizing it within one's immediate community. It creates a subtle pressure, but a positive one, towards greater generosity or cooperation.
So making giving visible is step one. But beyond that, are there more structured systems that can actively encourage and maybe even institutionalize this kind of generalized giving within, say, a company or a team?
Absolutely. The reciprocity ring sounds like a particularly powerful tool for building this culture within an organization.
The reciprocity ring, what is that exactly?
It's an ingenious, structured group activity developed by sociologists Wayne and Cheryl Baker. Basically, individuals in the group explicitly state a need they have, whether it's for an introduction, a piece of information, some advice, whatever.
Okay, they put their request out there.
They put it out there openly. And then others in the group offer help if they can. It directly addresses the common reluctance people have to ask for help. Surprisingly, research shows about 90% of all help exchanged at work is actually in response to a direct request.
90%. So people want to help, but we're just bad at asking.
We're often embarrassed to ask. We fear it makes us look incompetent or needy. The reciprocity ring creates this psychologically safe space specifically for asking, which then triggers this amplified cycle of giving, where people readily offer assistance because the norm has been set.
And does it work?
Companies using it report significant, measurable benefits. They estimate saving hundreds of thousands of dollars and dozens of days of work time in just a couple of hours of participation, just by connecting needs with resources already present in the group. But maybe more importantly, it fosters this strong sense of shared identity, collective efficacy, and deep trust within the group. It transforms individual silos into this connected web of mutual support.
That's amazing. It really seems to just grease the wheels of collaboration by making it safe to be vulnerable and ask for what you need. Now, what about recognizing giving that might otherwise go unseen, especially in large organizations where individual contributions can easily get lost in the shuffle?
That's where innovative systems like the Love Machine come in. This was developed at Linden Lab, the company behind the virtual world Second Life.
The Love Machine sounds interesting.
It is. It's essentially a peer recognition program. Employees could easily send virtual love messages to appreciate colleagues' help, big or small. And crucially, these messages were made visible to others.
Ah, so public recognition for helping.
Exactly. It effectively rewarded and recognized giving by linking it directly to status and reputation within the company. The founder noted it created this fascinating dynamic where tech geeks started to compete to see who could be the most helpful.
Huh. Gamifying helpfulness.
Kind of. This simple system boosted the awareness of crucial contributions that might typically be overlooked, like help from support staff or engineers who quietly helped others debug their code late at night. It shifted the competitive landscape, subtly, from purely individual achievement to collective contribution and helpfulness.
It's a fantastic way to internalize and normalize giving, making it something to aspire to rather than something hidden or taken for granted. And then there are even broader initiatives that seem to transcend individual organizations and touch entire communities. Grant talks about giftivism.
Yes, these are broader movements, often championed by organizations like Service Space, founded by Nipun Mehta. They promote giftivism activism through giving. Think of initiatives like Karma Kitchen. It's a restaurant, originally in Berkeley, California, where the meals have no prices on the menu.
No prices. How does that work?
At the end of your meal, you receive a bill for $0, with just a note explaining that your meal was a gift from someone who came before you. And you're simply invited to pay it forward, if you wish, to cover the cost for those who will dine after you.
Wow. Pure trust and generosity.
Pure trust. Or initiatives like helpothers.org, which encourages anonymous acts of kindness. They provide printable giver tags with little smile cards, asking recipients to simply pass on the generosity to someone else.
Spreading ripples of kindness.
Exactly. Nipun Mehta encapsulates the essence of this beautifully. He says, the more you give, the more you want to do it, as do others around you. It's like going to the gym. If you've been working out your kindness muscles, you get stronger at it. These systems cultivate generalized giving you give to the broader community and trust that the community somehow gives back to you. It reinforces that giver identity and helps build a collective culture of generosity. It's about building that kindness muscle in society.
That's a powerful metaphor, building kindness muscles. And it applies not just to these grand organizational initiatives or community movements, but to individual efforts too, right? Through things like personal generosity experiments and this concept of job crafting.
Absolutely. For individuals looking to consciously cultivate their own giver identity, engaging in personal generosity challenges can be incredibly effective. Grant mentions the Good 30-Day Challenge, where individuals commit to doing an act of kindness each day for a month. Or Sasha Dichter's experiment, where he committed to saying yes to every single request for help for an entire month.
Wow, that sounds intense.
Very intense.
Hmm.
But these structured self-giving experiments can powerfully reinforce a giver identity. However, as we discussed earlier regarding burnout, the structure of that giving is important for sustainability.
Right, the chunking versus sprinkling.
Exactly. These experiments are likely most psychologically rewarding and sustainable if the giving is chunked, maybe spending somewhere between 2 and 11 hours a week on it, distributed into multiple acts, perhaps once a week, rather than trying to do small things every single day, which can lead to exhaustion or feeling like it's just another item on the to-do list. It's about quality, focus, and allowing yourself to feel the impact.
And finally, job crafting. This sounds like a win-win strategy that benefits everyone, not just givers, but could be particularly impactful for them in making their work more meaningful.
Indeed. Job crafting is all about actively customizing your existing job, modifying your tasks, your relationships, or even just how you perceive your work to incorporate more meaningful activities, leverage your unique strengths, and align your work more closely with your passions and purpose.
So you're tweaking your job to fit you better.
Exactly. And for givers, this is an incredible opportunity to expand their positive impact in ways that feel authentic. This could mean taking the initiative to mentor junior colleagues, designing new training programs to share knowledge, or finding ways to improve internal processes that help everyone work more effectively.
And how does this benefit matchers or takers?
For matchers, job crafting can create rewarding opportunities for reciprocity. Maybe they take on a task they enjoy that also helps a colleague, creating a positive exchange. It makes them feel valued and can inspire them to work harder. And even for takers, job crafting can align their personal gain with company benefit by allowing them to pursue more interesting, self-directed work that uses their skills in a way that also directly serve the organization's goals.
So it's a really versatile strategy.
Very versatile. It enhances motivation, personal fulfillment, and overall effectiveness across all the reciprocity styles. It helps create this virtuous cycle where personal meaning and organizational contribution become deeply intertwined, benefiting everyone involved.
What stands out to you about how all these things, from individual mindset shifts to structured programs, how these relatively small intentional acts, when they're consistently practiced and embedded into systems, can collectively shift an entire culture?
I think what's most striking is that it's not just about grand sweeping gestures. It's really about creating environments, deliberately designing social architectures where giving is simply seen more often, where it's valued, where it's encouraged, and where ultimately it becomes the accepted norm, the default way to interact. It highlights the profound power we have to shape human behavior through the systems and cultures we build.
It truly changes everything, doesn't it? We've explored today how giving, far from being this weakness or liability we might sometimes assume it is, can actually be a powerful engine for success. But it requires strategic awareness, a clear understanding of these dynamics.
It's smart generosity.
Smart generosity, I like that. We've seen how successful givers leverage unique networking approaches like weak ties and dormant ties, how they empower others through a profound belief in their potential, that Pygmalion effect, how they influence effectively, often through authentic vulnerability and powerless communication.
Right. Building prestige, not just dominance.
Exactly. How they protect themselves from exploitation, often by advocating fiercely for others, which paradoxically helps themselves. And crucially, how they sustain their generosity by connecting directly to its tangible impact, avoiding burnout by being otherish.
Finding that balance between self-interest and other interest.
It's really about a smarter, more sustainable way to thrive, isn't it? So the next time you're thinking about how to get ahead in your career or how to build stronger relationships or even just how to make a greater impact in your community, maybe the real question isn't just what can I take or what's fair in this specific exchange. Maybe the more powerful question is how can I give in a way that truly energizes and empowers everyone around me, including myself?
A fundamental shift in perspective.
Think about it. Consider the profound ripple effect if more people in your own professional and personal circles started operating with more of an otherish mindset, actively seeking to be both self-interested and other-interested. What incredible possibilities could be unlocked if our collective focus shifted, even slightly, from just guarding our own resources to actively amplifying impact? If our ambition was fueled not just by personal gain, but by the genuine desire to lift others as we climb, imagine a world where success isn't just measured by individual achievement, but by the prosperity and growth of everyone connected to you. That's a powerful thought to end on.